Okay, we're trying this lipstick for the first time. This is L'Oreal Sun Wash. Hello everyone, my name is Liv and welcome to a video that has been a long time coming where I talk about what I've been reading this year. I haven't made any videos talking about these books yet, and so I am going to be sharing with you what I have been reading from the beginning of January through the end of June, so the past 6 months, the first half of 2025. The title of this video is the best books that I've read in 2025. However, I am going to touch on all of the books, but I'm only going to really talk about and explain my favorites so that you know what I think is best, and maybe you can add those to your TBR because some of these are really good. You might want to consider taking some of my recommendations, but let's just get into it right off the bat with the very beginning of the year. I'm going to try and keep some of these series together so that way I'm not like talking about like the same sort of world super far apart. So the first book I read of the year was The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, and I also read The Burning God at the very beginning of February. So I finished the Poppy War Trilogy. Oh my god! This trilogy was so good, starting off with a bang. They are obviously about war and politics and power and the world, while also being so addictive and entertaining and fascinating, and it is based off of real historical events. I believe the Second Sino-Japanese War, I think, but it's so cool because she adds fantasy elements into this, and it's so cool. And our main character is so fascinating. It is such a journey. I would recommend this so hard, but it is a lot. It's a lot to put your heart and soul into. So just be prepared for that. It's a heavy one. Then I read Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I thought that this was really good. What I will say is that I still haven't read Vengeful. There is a second book that I haven't read, but I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really interesting. It's about superpowers, it's about rivalries, and yeah, pretty entertaining. First ever V.E. Schwab book, pretty good. I also read Animal Farm by George Orwell for the first time. This book was, I feel like I don't need to go too deep into this because it is a classic that so many people have read, but if not, I really feel like you should read it because it's not a challenging read, it's a very short read, but it's very powerful, and it's a must read. You know what I'm saying? Next, I read the first book of the Zodiac Academy series. I am going to be glossing over each of these books, but just know that I've been reading them. Okay, When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is a fantasy book about dragons. I thought it was pretty neat. What I liked the best, honestly, is the fact that there's a glossary at the beginning. That's cool. The world building, the attention to detail was very cool. I didn't think it was too, like, remarkable or anything, but I had a lot of fun reading this. It's very entertaining. The romance was okay. The dragons were cool. I also read Cultish by Amanda Montell. I don't have it right now because I lended it to a friend, but it was so interesting. It's about the language of cults, and I thought that it was so fascinating and something that I feel like could be really beneficial for everyone to read so that you can sort of start to realize the language of unhealthy groups and communities. I thought that it was very beneficial. I read Dirty Diana by Jen Besser and Shauna Feste, I don't really know how it's pronounced, but this book was interesting. I thought it was cool. It was about sex and art and passion and life. It wasn't anything too special, but I did find it to be interesting, and I enjoyed it for the most part. One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake was so good. I have really enjoyed Olivia Blake's writing so far. This book was so interesting. It is about two rivaling witch families. There's a family, so like with a mom, and like she has like 1 trillion daughters, and then there's a dad with 3 sons, the Fedorovs with the sons, the Antonovas with the daughters, and they're like rivaling families. It's kind of giving Romeo and Juliet. There's some like romance, and we're mainly following the youngest children who are kind of like born into this rivalry, who are just kind of taught this is how it is, and they're just kind of like not supposed to question it, but obviously they do. And it is simultaneously so beautiful. But once again, like Olivia Blake has just such this sense of humor in her writing that just it's not as much as in Masters of Death, but it is still definitely there. And the characters are so interesting. And I found its questions about love, power, and rivalry, and kind of questioning, why do we feel certain ways about people? And is it worth upholding or not? I listened to an audiobook for Penitence by Kristen Koval. It It was interesting. It was kind of a story about a young girl, like 13 years old, I think, who shoots and kills her brother in the middle of the night. Long story short, it's mostly like courtroom family drama. It was interesting. I didn't think it was anything special, but I was definitely entertained and curious the whole time, but nothing special. For As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, I could talk about this book forever and ever and ever. It was incredible. It is a story about a young woman like living in Syria during the Syrian civil war. And basically she's trying to decide between fleeing the country to save herself and her loved ones, or staying in Syria because she's been working in a hospital helping to save lives of people, you know, when they're being bombed and such. It's insane and so devastating, but what I really liked about this book was that this author still gave the main characters love and hope and pride, you know, really gave this situation so much nuance and so much power, and it taught me so much about an issue that I never knew about in Syria. That's not something that has ever been taught to me. I've been like actually keeping up to date with Syria and the news in Syria now, and it's absolutely insane. Such an incredible book. 10 out of 10 recommend this book. 5 out of 5 stars, maybe. I read the second Zodiac Academy book. What was it called? Ruthless Fae. Just as bad as the first book, maybe marginally better. Just as bad as the first book, though. I read Quicksilver by Callie Hart. Didn't like it. Overrated. Thought it was really cringy. The romance was not my thing. Before they freak for the first time, he says something along the lines of like, I hope you're not afraid of the dark, or like something about being afraid of the dark. And it made me cringe so hard that I had to pause my audiobook and like really question my decisions. But I did finish it and I didn't like it at all. Then I read A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I really loved the Divine Rivals duology, and this duology, just as good. There is something about her writing style that is so incredible. But the setting of these books is absolutely crazy. It follows a young man named Jack, and he is from this island or isle called Cadence, and he grows up from ages like 11 to 21 on the mainland. So like, you know, just regular city, society, whatever. But he's called back because there's a issue happening on this island where there are missing girls. They're like young girls, like children, going missing. He is called back to the island to help sort of solve this mystery and save these girls, and it is crazy. So on this island, there are two rivaling clans. We have the Breckons and the Tamerlanes, and Jack is a Tamerlane. He teams up with his like childhood rival, what's her name, Adara, to solve this mystery, and it's so good. This setting, like I said, this setting really shines through. It is like a Scottish folktale inspired book, and they're like these spirits, and like nature is really like the way that like the nature works, spirits. It's so beautiful. Jack is a bard, so there's a lot of really beautiful like music that he plays and everything, and A Fire Endless. I didn't read this till a few months later, but this book was just as good. Perfect continuation, seamless, and gorgeous. Then I read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This is obviously a very heavy book. It is about race. It kind of follows different characters in this community, their experiences being Black and dealing with beauty standards and gender roles and sexuality, sexual assault, all of these different very heavy topics regarding race and the way that they are socially harmed by Eurocentric beauty standards, and the power of being white, being male, and how being a Black woman is probably like one of the most powerless experiences to be. There was a everybody in the world was in a position to give them orders, which is Black women. White women said, do this. White children said, give me that. White men said, come here. Black men said, lay down. The only people they need not take orders from were Black children and each other. And so that's what this book is about. It is very heavy, but it's so, so fascinating. And I actually really, really, really loved this book, and I would highly recommend it. I also listened to the audiobook version of Paper Doll by Dylan Mulvaney. I am a little biased because I do love Dylan Mulvaney, and I think she has a very, very powerful story to share about being a trans woman in the media, being a very prominent trans woman. And, you know, she's got such a good personality and what I view to be a very good heart. I mean, she really has always just been trying to spread positivity and kindness and joy, and people have really, 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 really not given that back to her, and I thought her story was so nice, and I loved her quirky little writing style. I felt like her personality really shines through in it too, and I really liked it. And I really liked hearing her narrate it as well. I thought it was great. Love you, Dylan Mulvaney. Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed was a super interesting book. This is like a gothic horror fairy tale about a girl. Well, she's like 23. Her name's Marlinchin, and she has 2 sisters. They are witches, and they're kind of living under the like abusive rule of their father, even though they're like, and Marlinchin's the youngest one. She has 2 older sisters. They're like full adult women being held down by their father. It's a really crazy story, and Marlinchin is just kind of coming to terms with her power and sort of discovering freedom for the first time, and it tackles a lot of issues about being a young woman, sexuality, growing up, freedom, magic. There's also, but a trigger warning, there's a lot of references to cannibalism, metaphorically and literally. Also, of course, abusive parents and such, but yeah, I thought it was really good. I love Ava Reed's writing style. She is so fascinating. Also, I just got my copy of A Theory of Dreaming. I'm so excited to start that. Okay, yeah. Then I listened to the audiobooks for The Serpent and the Wings of Night and The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. Those books were honestly pretty good. I do really love vampires, so I do kind of go into it with a bias in terms of that being one of my favorite supernatural creatures, but it follows, the sort of typical romantasy structure with like, the trials and whatever, but I liked it because I felt like the politics and the world building were very interesting. I thought that the romance was pretty good, pretty average, but it kind of reminded me of something like Fourth Wing or Powerless with, weak, powerless girl enters into these treacherous trials and comes out on top and falls in love. But I thought that this did it better, especially with like the politics and the background situation, than either of those. So yeah. Then I read To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. This book was pretty interesting. It's pretty slow-paced, very character-driven. It's really about, like, these characters' inner thoughts and feelings. It follows a family and some of their, like, friends as well, staying in this like vacation home kind of in Scotland, and their plans to travel to visit this lighthouse. And it is really interesting. It's really sad. Very, very introspective. There's a lot of, like, big questions being asked. Like, it literally feels like on every page there's a question that's like, what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of any of this? Like, that's kind of how it feels. But I really liked it. I like that philosophical kind of like deep thinking sort of book, and like the sort of venture through these characters' minds. And it's also like interesting historically with these characters, like kind of like a critique of like the Victorian period. And there are some like very interesting like thoughts on like gender roles and stuff as well, and it's about life and the things we do and why we do them and whatever, it's about the little things. It's about the little things. That's what this is about. It's very, very good. Then we have Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. This is probably one of my favorite romantasy books that I've read so far because it's very, very unique. It's very well written. It's very cute. It's very fun. We have characters who are actually adults. Our female main character is like in her 30s, and it's about, she unsheaths this old sword that she finds, and a man comes out of it. There's this magical man named Sarkis who lives in a sword. And whenever he has like this magical curse where like whenever the sword is unsheathed, he basically becomes a sort of servant of sorts to the wielder of this sword, and they go on this adventure to sort of save our main character, whose name is Hala. I almost forgot. Her name is Hala, and she's trying to escape like her tyrannical in-laws. And it's so fun. It's so adventurous. It's so cute. I really, really, really enjoyed it. And this is my first T. Kingfisher book. I'm excited to read more by her, though, because she seems to be a pretty well-known, pretty popular, and well-written author. So then I read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. This is her first memoir. So it follows her childhood from like birth to like late teen years. And it is so fascinating. I love the way that she's able to write from a child's perspective so realistically. Like, you're seeing everything exactly as her child brain was interpreting it. And I always find that to be so, so interesting. One of my favorite books ever, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, does the same thing, where you're really inside of her childhood brain and you're witnessing how she grows up and how she sort of began to understand her environment. And but at the same time, it also does a very good job of describing like the historical environment of the different places that she was as she grew up, the different places she lived and moved to, the different people that she met, and sort of what was going on in America at the time and like worldwide. It's very interesting how she's able to balance that like childhood perspective and just sort of like general social, political context within it. It was so cool. It was so cool and sad. This is one of the books that I would like really heavily recommend. So, so good. Then I read the third Zodiac Academy book. I think this is the one where I liked the ending. I think this is the one where the ending was like really exciting, and so that's why I kind of like upped the stars a little bit from like 1 to 2, but yeah. I don't know, man. Then I read Persuasion by Jane Austen. I do not feel like digging that book out because it's in like a little pack of whatever. Persuasion by Jane Austen. This is another banger from Jane. I liked it because it was giving like second chance romance type of vibes. I mean, it's just like a classic Jane Austen romance. Like, I don't know. I liked she has to look back in her past and question, why did she make this decision to reject this guy's proposal? And then they meet again and she's like, I kind of like him. And it's, it's Jane. Ninth House, Leigh Bardugo, super interesting. This is a book about a girl who has been given a scholarship to Yale for a very special reason, so that she can work with this secret like organization that sort of acts as like the managers of the many secret societies at Yale University. These like Skull and Bone Society you may have heard of, because that's like a real thing. I think it's real, supposedly. And so sort of she's a part of this group called Leith. I think it's pronounced Leith. And they are meant to sort of oversee these different secret societies, make sure that they're like being like ethical, I think, and like following basic supernatural rules, because they're doing all these like rituals and crazy stuff. It is so interesting. And our main character is so cool because the reason that she's selected for this in the first place, because she's had a very hard life. She's not like typical Yale student material. It's because she can see ghosts naturally. And that's not very common. Most people need like this special drug to be able to see ghosts. She can see them. And so she has like this special power that makes her very beneficial, because she can just like point out supernatural happenings without needing to like take any extra steps. And there's mystery and rituals and everything. I will say, trigger warnings for this. Oh, I also did read Hellbent. No, I read that in July. So we're not technically we're not talking about Hellbent yet, but it's very good. But trigger warnings. Check up on your trigger warnings, because there's some stuff in here that's really weird and really strange and that I didn't really think was necessary for the plot. I feel like some of it's weird, but most of it is very good and I enjoyed it a lot. It's very interesting. This next book is Back Here, Great Big Beautiful Life, and Emily Henry. I'm not gonna dig it out, but it's right there. I read it. This is my favorite Emily Henry book so far. I know that it kind of strays away from her other like rom-com style books, but I think it was like the most interesting story. It had the most depth. I loved the concept. Her, this journalist who's trying to write a autobiography about this like famous old celebrity who's like kind of hidden away, but she has competition. And so they're both kind of unraveling the story and trying to like be the one to get the book, but then they're like rivaling, and then they kind of follow. And you know it. I loved it. I thought it was so good. So much better than any of her other books. I mean, I do really like Emily Henry, but this was above and beyond, in my opinion. Then I did read the fourth book of the Zodiac Academy series. I feel like now is where my memory of like what happens when starts to kind of blend, because there's just so many books and there's so much happening. But yeah, I gave it 2 stars as well. I don't know. Then I read Atomic Habits by James Clear. Now, self-help books aren't much of my thing. I did think it was interesting. It wasn't anything crazy. I don't regret reading it. I think it was good. But it didn't feel life-changing. I can tell you that much. It did not feel groundbreaking for me. Oh, I listened to Our Infinite Fates, but I liked it so much. I liked Our Infinite Fates so much that I did buy a copy of it. I really, really, really enjoyed this audiobook. And look, it's got gold edges. That's really cool. I liked this book so much. It is about these 2 people who are consistently reincarnated, destined to find each other, but one of them, named Arden, I believe, he is always killing the other, Evelyn, and he refuses to tell her why. So he kills them like right before they turn 18. He refuses to let them turn 18. So, but I just really loved these characters. I felt such strong chemistry between them. I felt like their love was very, very, very believable. And I loved the way that, you know, no matter what bodies they're in, no matter what time period, no matter what setting, their love is the same. And it's sort of like immortal in that way and like unchangeable. I thought that was so beautiful. And all the different time periods were so interesting. And I love the fact they go to all different countries. They're in all different eras. They're like all different types of people. They're in all different types of areas and settings. And it's so cool. It's so cool. I would recommend this if you like fantasy, romantasy. It's so beautiful. So we're ending this video off with a banger. One of my favorite books that I've read so far this year by far is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I picked up this book because I heard so many great things about it. This was actually in my summer TBR video that I made. This book is basically a really fascinating modern interpretation of biblical stories. And obviously, like, this takes place in the early 1900s, which doesn't feel modern to us, but compared to like the Bible, like very modern. And it kind of tackles these concepts of good versus evil, love and rejection, nature versus nurture, you know, all the good English literature stuff. It uses like these biblical stories to tackle those issues, along with like family dynamics and individual relationships to faith, to the self, all of these crazy things. It mainly follows this man named Adam Trask, him, his brother, then him and his wife, then him and his sons. He has 2 twin boys. And they kind of do this Cain and Abel thing. We have Charles and Adam, Cain and Abel, and then we have Caleb and Aaron, Cain and Abel. But yeah, it kind of, I think mostly is sort of about, you know, like, one, are we born good or born evil? How much of that is something that we have, or how much of that is something that we can choose, and how much of that is something we can learn? As well as like the impact of rejection and being rejected by your parent and the person who's supposed to love and nurture you unconditionally. I'm not doing a good job of describing this, but I found all of these characters to be so interesting individually. The Hamiltons, which are the other like big family in this book, they're sort of like, I don't know, they mostly feel kind of like accessories to the story of Adam Trask and the Trask's family. There's a certain critique of Christian dogma and sort of questions modern Christian beliefs, but it's still very respectful of the Christian faith. Like, it's not, I feel like you could read this whether or not you believe in Christianity. I feel like it's not something where like you have to be a Christian or you have to be an atheist. Like, I will say, I do think you should know your basic Bible stories before reading this book. At least I think that I don't know, I think it just makes it more impactful if you already kind of have a little bit of that background knowledge. So it has food for thought for both of those people. And I'm just rambling on because I love this book so much and I found it to be so interesting and so sad. Like, that last page, bro, gets ya. Huge recommendation for this book. It is so, so good. So that is everything that I read in the first 6 months. But yeah, I've already read quite a bit in July and August. And so at the end of the year, you're going to get to hear everything about that. I hope that you take some of the recommendations from this video. And yeah, I hope you enjoy, and I will talk to you guys later.